ahead, Jeannie.
Good evening. I'm Jeannie Brown from the League of Women Voters of San Diego. And I want to thank our co-hosts, Susan Howe from the Center for Community Energy and Michelle Morgan from San Diego 350 for co-hosting tonight's event. And I'd also like to welcome our candidates, our three candidates, Jane Glasson, Tommy Howe, and Kent Lee. So even though we do miss seeing everyone in person, we are reaching more people via Zoom who can hear directly from the candidates to help make this important decision on the ballot. We are also taping this so people that miss it tonight can see it in the future. If you have any questions, please look in the chat box to find out how to reach us. The League is proud to be a nonpartisan, neither supporting nor opposing candidates nor political parties, but always looking and working on vital issues of concern to members and the public. Our Voters Edge website is your online resource for more information about candidates, ballot issues, and detailed voting information. All candidates for local offices have been invited to include their information there with no cost to the candidate. I expect that all the candidates will include their information. You will find a link in the chat. And by the way, KPBS Radio will now start directing their listeners to research their ballots on Voters Edge starting in May. The League moderates candidate forums using a format that is fair and informative. We ask that the candidates keep to the issues of the position rather than personal attacks, because our goal is for voters to be able to learn more about candidates than they can from campaign ads and social media. The views expressed are those of the candidates, not of the League of Women Voters. And sponsorship of the forum is not an endorsement by the sponsor or by the League of any candidate. We are recording this forum and it will be available unedited from beginning to end to the public on our website, lwvsandiego.org. We have asked attendees to submit questions online before the forum, but you may also submit questions using the link provided in the chat box. Please remember to use civility and respect in wording your questions and frame them so that all candidates can answer. In other words, don't direct the question to just one candidate. So assisting tonight are League questioners Jane Andrews and Wanda Rogers, and from our host organizations, Ms. Michelle Morgan and Susan Howe. Our timekeeper is Vicki Riggs, and our Zoom administrator is Kim Knox. This forum is for the San Diego City Council District 6. Participating tonight are candidates Jane Glasson, Tommy Howe, and Kent Lee. Candidates will have 2 minutes for their opening statements, 2 minutes for their closing statements, and 1 minute to respond to each question from the audience. We will alternate who answers each question first. Prior to the start of this event, speaking order was determined alphabetically by their last name. And so Jane Glasson will give the first opening statement and Kent Lee will have the first closing statement. So Jane, your opening statement, please.
Hello, my name is Jane L. Glasson. I appreciate my candidates and the Council for District 6. I thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. I thank Jeannie Brown as well. I appreciate participating in the candidates forum. I'm a special education assistant at a high school. My priorities are to fix streets and potholes, protect beaches, maintain parks, support businesses, restore public safety to numbers needed to protect neighborhoods. I'm with experience commit. I graduated with distinction in the merit at a university, graduated with honors at a community college. I was Young Lady of the Year of a Boys and Girls Club twice. I volunteered on the junior staff. My degree is in child development. I have 2 associate general studies and foreign languages. I speak a few languages, a homeowner and resident in Mesa since '98. I volunteered as treasurer of my community association, volunteered as a chapter officer while a college student, and I will do my best with much care to earn your trust. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now, Tommy?
Thank you very much, Jean. How much time do I have for my opening remarks?
2 minutes. Mhm.
Thank you.
2 minutes.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Tommy Howe. I'm a San Diego County Planning Commissioner, and clearly I'm here with my fellow candidates running for San Diego City Council in District 6. Many of you may recall that I ran for the District 6 seat back in 2018. I'm the co-founder of San Diego County Democrats for Environmental Action, which is an organization I founded that was chartered by the Democratic Party back in 2014. I'm a former radio host. Some of you might recall I used to be on the air at FM 94.9 at the old Jefferson Pilot Cluster in Mission Valley. More recently, I was the morning host at 91X, and I was briefly on the air at KPRI. My wife and I, we live in Mira Mesa. I have been very much involved with the environment, both personally and professionally over the last 22 years. I was most recently leading the Rewild Mission Bay effort through the San Diego Audubon Society as the main coordinator and chief consultant to the project. And it's a project that's very near and dear to my heart, restoring native wetlands in Northeast Mission Bay. I manage communications for our local Surfrider chapter here in San Diego. I manage communications for a wilderness advocacy organization in Oregon called Oregon Wild. But our campaign is really focused on infrastructure restoration in District 6, fixing our broken streets, getting more effective transit throughout the district and throughout the city, and also genuine affordable housing. And we do have a number of, I would describe threats to our local environment here in the city. Open space being eaten away by development, an active proposal to build upon multiple species conservation program lands in Sorrento Valley, rising sea levels, increased year-round wildfire risk, water supply issues, increased immigration as part of climate change, and also fighting sprawl and finding a way to make infill and densification work. I know we're going to be discussing some environmental justice topics tonight too, so I'll hold off on talking more about those, but I'll go over my endorsements, I guess, later on during the close. But I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight, and I appreciate the platform.
Thank you. Now, Kent?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to San Diego 350, the Center for Community Energy, as well as the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's forum. My name is Kent Lee. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a Democrat running for San Diego City Council to represent District 6. And I come to the table really as the son of immigrants from Vietnam and Burma who came to the United States searching for greater opportunity. As a father myself of 2 toddlers, especially in a home where both my wife and I are working to support our family, we know really all too well the financial hardships we're enduring currently with the rising costs we see at the grocery store, whether it's to keep a roof over our heads, coupled with years, if not decades, of stagnant wages. Navigating us out of these tough economic times, I believe, requires trusted community experience and leadership that's going to be working hard for our families, small businesses, and really all San Diegans. My background is rooted specifically in service to the community and especially in District 6. Our family has called this our home for over 15 years. And currently I serve as the executive director of Pacific Arts Movement, where we present the San Diego Asian Film Festival, which is going on literally as we speak. I also volunteer as a member of the Mira Mesa Community Planning Group, serve on UC San Diego's Chancellor's Community Advisory Board. And I'm also a co-founder and co-chair of the San Diego Asian Pacific Islander Coalition. What you'll find is that my nonprofit leadership background, specifically in fiduciary responsibility and budget oversight, gives me the fiscal experience needed to manage large budgets in really under-resourced environments, to build broad coalitions and collaborative partnerships, and also the depth of community-driven support, which showcases the very voices that we're all seeking to represent. I'm especially running following a pandemic where we've seen how often marginalized communities, especially those of color, have seen the disparate impacts that they face, but only exacerbated. That's why I'm passionate about bringing a lens of equity in terms of how we move our city forward and in terms of answering some of our greatest challenges. I look forward to tonight's discussion, but even more importantly, really to engage folks here in the months ahead and look forward to seeing how the city can work with our communities to advance action when it comes to climate and our environment today. So thank you, Ken.
Thank you all. And before we go to the questions, our co-hosts would like to say a few words. So Susan Whale from Center for Community Energy, would you like to speak?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I want to start by thanking the League for giving me the opportunity to introduce my organization, the Center for Community Energy. I am a founding board member and the VP of Operations. CCE is a local nonprofit working to promote energy efficiency and electrification in our communities. We do this through education, research, advocacy, and consulting. We are also an intervener before the California Public Utilities Commission. In this capacity, we are working to influence the development of energy policy to enable California to achieve critical decarbonization goals and to reduce energy costs. This year's CCE's programs are focusing on electric vehicles, EV standards, and vehicle to grid, or really vehicle to everything opportunities. We are developing solutions to promote EV charging from local solar during the day and using local microgrids. Thanks to grants from the County of San Diego, we are also working to identify incentives that will encourage the replacement of gas hot water heaters with heat pump units in rental properties. CCE is a member of the San Diego Building Electrification Coalition, and yesterday we participated along with the League, San Diego 350, and other members of the coalition in the world's largest free Earth Day fair in Balboa Park. It was terrific, and I want to thank everyone who was there. Please visit our website, the centerforcommunityenergy.org, to learn more about us. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And now Michelle.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, candidates. I'm a volunteer for San Diego 350 and also for the League, so you're going to see me a little bit here. San Diego 350 is an inclusive volunteer organization building a movement to prevent the worst impacts of climate change and climate injustice. We strive to create a future that supports a livable planet and just society through education and outreach, public policy, advocacy, and mobilizing people to take action. Our vision is for informed, mobilized, and united community that is empowered to reduce our carbon footprint and hold our elected officials accountable for creating a low carbon, sustainable, and just world. Our power comes from our alliance with our organizations advancing social justice, environmental protection, fair labor efforts, public health, faith, and other partners. And we are just very grateful to join together with the League tonight and listen to your answers to many questions from the community. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, both of you. So now we do go to the questions. And if you need the question repeated, please ask. So we're going to start this time with Tommy. And Tommy, what are you doing personally to reduce your carbon footprint?
Well, I'll tell you, for starters, I don't drive very much these days, except for a lot of candidate-related odds and ends, but typically it's just different areas around the district. So my wife has been working from home. In fact, today is her 16th anniversary of her job, and she's been essentially working in a mobile manner for all of these years, which is great. So she definitely got out in front of working from home. We've also been capturing our shower water. A lot of times when you wind up turning on the shower before the hot water heat really kicks in, there's a lot of cold water. We often wind up utilizing that for our toilets and also for plants around the house. We make sure we keep that water and we don't let it go to waste. We've installed rooftop solar on our home 2 years ago with Baker Electric. That's been working out marvelously well. We're very, very happy about that. Obviously, I'm an advocate for rooftop solar, and of course, like many in the city, we recycle.
Thank you. All right, Kent, the same question. What are you doing personally to reduce your carbon footprint?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. My family and I have been committed to advancing environmentalism, especially knowing that we're raising 2 young children who a part of our life really is about teaching them what's important as we look ahead to the future. We've done a little bit to look at how we can make our home more environmentally friendly. installing rooftop solar. We utilize energy efficient appliances. Smart technology is something that I've been a big believer in, especially in terms of how we can conserve the use of utilities in our household. And really, my wife and I have also just been focused on teaching our children, the value of both protecting the environment, doing things like committing to recycling, but also, the importance of being out and enjoying sort of the spaces around us. Those are probably just a couple of things that we do personally.
Thank you. And Jane?
Sorry about that pause. Well, what I'm doing personally to reduce my carbon footprint, well, I walk a lot. Sometimes I walk about 7 miles a day, but I don't have to because I work across the street from where I live. I work at a high school. My condominium complex is that close at the intersection. So I just walk and I take public transportation on occasion. And I conserve water at my condo and I recycle. And I appreciate the restaurants that have different trash compost bins. I always put the stuff in the right place because I want to care a lot about the environment. I love God. I love the earth. I do my best to take care of it because I know we are very blessed to have such a wonderful, beautiful earth. And we're very fortunate to have people like you, League of Women Voters, who care so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. For our second question, we're going to start with Kent. And what is your position on amending the outdated People's Ordinance, which prohibits the city of San Diego from recovering costs associated with trash pickup services from residents living in single-family homes?
Thank you for the question. I think this is actually really an important question. I know it's being discussed as we speak really at the city. And as someone who's been running a campaign really focused on equity, I think that's what this question really is about, because we know that the People's Ordinance as it's currently written really has an equity question in place in terms of the bifurcation and how, in terms of how we treat different folks within our San Diego community. I really believe this is something that should be brought forward to voters to consider it. I know Council President Sean Elo and others, including Joe Cobb and others, have been exploring this, and I think it would be important to bring this forward to voters. Now, if it really is an equity issue, I think the question that also comes into play is twofold on the other side, which is that community input and outreach is extremely important. I think if we're going to be looking at changing the People's Ordinance at all, that having community input on how that looks moving forward is critical. And then also how we address the equity in terms of households who may be severely impacted.
Thank you. All right, Tommy, will you answer the same question about the People's Ordinance?
My opponent didn't really answer it, but I will. I'm largely opposed to it for a couple of reasons. One of which is that one of the duties of a city is to go and protect public health. That's an overriding concern. This is almost the medieval concern, but one of the things that cities are able to do that we cannot necessarily do as residents is go and collect garbage. You've got to collect garbage. That's the way you keep a clean city. That's the way you keep diseases from spreading. We've seen what happens when we don't wind up keeping spaces clean, especially in the case of downtown. It's really a matter of revenue. The city is desperate for revenue, and I will be the first in line and the first to agree to say that everything's on the table as far as finding ways to increase revenue downtown. We've got a 30% vacancy rate across the board. I'm not so sure if taking away the People's Ordinance is the best way to go and increase that revenue for the city. And in a way, you're already paying the city taxes for it. So I am dubious of repealing that at this point.
Thank you. All right, and Jane?
I like Tommy's answer. I don't have a great answer for that, but I do like Tommy's answer a lot. Community input, and if I'm elected, I would do my best working with the other council members to do what's best. I would read the material as best I can, and do my best to make great decisions. Like when I volunteered as a treasurer on my board, I did a lot of reading. I talked with the board members to come up with the best for my community. And so I will say I'm really impressed with Tommy's answer, and I wish I could do just as well.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, the third question, we will start with Tommy. And what is the largest environmental justice issue you believe is facing District 6? And what would you do to address it?
Well, let me start at 30,000 feet. Let me say, I would say the biggest environmental justice issue, I think, in the city is really this issue that we have with food deserts. This has been a problem for a long time. We have a lot of communities where you really don't have any supermarkets or any places nearby to get a really healthy and fresh and nutritious food. But I would also say that exposure to poor air quality is a real issue. You know, we've got a development in Mira Mesa called Casa Miraview. And a lot of our Mira Mesa neighbors don't necessarily like these apartments and condos alongside I-15. I don't have a problem with them, but unfortunately the neighbors there, they are really exposed to tremendously poor air quality as a result of their proximity to the freeway. I'm concerned about freeway expansion. I know that there's a proposal to expand the 52. I'm opposed to that. And obviously we're concerned about longer drives and commutes. But that may be more of an economic justice concern than an environmental justice concern.
Thank you. And Jane, you're next. What is the largest environmental justice issue you believe is facing District 6?
I think that the single family homes in University City are wonderful. And I really hope that rezoning does not happen, because I think that the air quality is awesome there. I was walking around there, going door to door, and the air was outstanding. I think that we need all those trees and plants and those single family homes, and we really don't need them to be turned into 4-family homes, because one, it brings down the property value. People might want to sell quickly, and the neighborhoods could just diminish. It's so important that we not make it harder for current homeowners when we try to find affordable housing for San Diegans. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. And Kent?
Thanks for the question. I think it's really important to note that really environmental justice impacts our region as a whole, especially in recognizing that policies and practices that we may have been putting in place over time has had disparate impacts for communities across the region. And in many cases, those have often affected low-income as well as communities of color in particular, especially from a health and environmental standpoint. And I think what's unique in this conversation is that it's not just the geographical one. I think we need to consider that there are pockets within every community that lack the investment that's needed. We look at communities, for example, like Mira Mesa and the southern portion of University City that have been developed a long time ago and still have issues in terms of transit, affordability, infrastructure that's needed to support those communities. The last thing I would note is that when you look at the climate equity index for the city, you'll also notice that in D6 in particular, the Kearney Mesa area, which is already under a community plan update, is significantly impacted compared to its surrounding areas.
Thank you. And Kent, you're going to start first on this next question. How will you engage marginalized communities in your decision-making process on policies and projects to move forward on the climate action plan?
Thank you for that question. Frankly, this is why I'm running to begin with. I think we recognize that communities need a voice when it comes to many of the policies and issues that we're addressing from a city standpoint, and especially, often marginalized communities have lacked that voice. I mean, in this district in particular, part of why I'm at the table is because it is a district that represents 40% of a population that is Asian and Pacific Islander, which is also a community that's not often had a seat at the table. And I believe that is important. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think if we truly want to be by and for the community, it means being willing to engage them in terms of conversation, be very communicative. That is an area where the city has struggled in many ways. over time, and ensuring that we really do actually have the outreach and engagement necessary as we're making major decisions. I think that really ultimately impacts everyone within our communities, but especially those who have not typically had their voices heard.
Thank you. And Jane, you're next on this question.
Hi. The same one, right? How will I engage marginalized communities?
Yes.
Okay. I want to say that I really appreciate my community. I appreciate everyone's input. And a little bit of surprise, I do look like I'm only one ethnicity, but I'm also a Asian American Pacific Islander because my mom and her father were born in the Philippines. When I talk, I want to engage people in conversation. I want to find out what they want in the community. And like, for instance, when I was walking around University City, going door to door, many people were giving me their input on what they wanted to see in the community. Also, I walked around Rancho Penasquitos and Scripps Ranch, and I got a lot of input, and I met a lot of great people, and I'm keeping their phone numbers so that if I do get elected, I can ask them for more feedback.
Okay, and then Tommy.
Well, I'm a Democrat, so I'm not supposed to talk about class, but I'll tell you, it really comes down to affordable housing. And this is something else where you need to have the wisdom to be able to go and make these decisions, not just in our district and District 6, but citywide. Our city is pathologically addicted to building housing that no one can afford, whether it's rentals or whether it's homes. And if you work a job where you may not have a college degree, chances are you probably have to drive longer to get there. Chances are you probably have to use transit to get there. I can tell you in District 6, our transit portfolio is abysmal. It's abysmal compared to the rest of the city. And we need to have more effective transit options. And since we're not going to get the trolley into Kearny Mesa until the Purple Line comes north, we're not going to get the trolley in Mira Mesa for decades. We have to get more effective bus service to get our neighbors to and from. But the first thing it has to start with is actually investing in either government subsidized or developer subsidized affordable housing, so people aren't forced to live in far off locales and then burn up VMTs on their way to their job, and in the process, burn their salaries.
Thank you. All right, we're going to the fifth question now. And we will start with Jane. What are your plans for addressing the rise in housing costs and the housing shortage? And what plans can the city take? Jane?
Plans for addressing the rise in cost of living. I would listen to the other council members and the mayor and people in the community to come up with the best solutions. I would see what the government already offers for homeowners, to refer people to. I know how lucky I was that my dad left me with all the money I needed to buy my condo. I didn't have to get a loan. I'd like to do my best for others so that they can as well. I said I'd own and 98. I would do my best for them and for everyone else in the city of San Diego.
Thank you. All right, Kent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Housing is the most critical issue that we're facing as a region, and it really means we need to put a significant focus on planning for both the affordable as well as the middle income housing development that we've been lacking. That's why we talk about the missing middle quite often. I think there are a couple of strategies that we could really focus on this front. The first thing is that we really need to find ways to preserve the nationally affordable housing that we have. Every bit of housing that's naturally affordable that we lose means that it takes even more work for the city and our region to consider how we develop that middle income housing that we need. We also really need to look at how we utilize public lands. The county and MTS, I think, have given us a really good example of that lately, working together to identify surplus public land that can be utilized for affordable housing development. That is specifically how we can identify opportunities that we can tie up with financing as well. And then finally, I think the one missing component oftentimes in these discussions is just how important housing finance is, ensuring that people have access to purchase a home, but also to lower the cost of housing development. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tommy, same question.
We have a serious housing issue here in San Diego, but it's also a housing affordability issue. Let's please not lose sight of that. The market has gone beyond the reach of any working person in this district or in this city to purchase a home. It is a tremendous crisis that we're facing. Now, one of the things that I proposed is either a city bank or some kind of public-private partnership that can lend qualified individuals money for a down payment so they can put down a credible and effective and competitive down payment when they're trying to purchase a home. In many cases, and I talk to neighbors every single day about this, you have individuals who might have two perfectly good earners in the household, but they simply, after 2 years of COVID, don't have the money for a down payment. That would get rid of a lot of the vacancies very, very quickly, and I think actually get more people into home ownership. I've also been talking for years about neighborhoodizing Miramar and changing the zoning to do that. Instead, they want to change the zoning in South University City, which makes 0 sense to do that. And I hope we talk more about that.
Thank you. And Tommy, you're first on this next question. Do you support the Sandag Regional Transportation Plan, which was passed in December 10th, 2021? And please explain why you do or do not.
Yeah, I'm supportive of it. I can tell you, back in 2016, I partnered with a lot of our friends in labor to oppose what was then a Sandag large spending measure, in part because it had a lot of economic impact and, frankly, environmental justice impacts with expanding freeways. Now, I am concerned about expanding the 52, and I would not be in support of that. But I can tell you, at the end of the day, I think that supporting the Sandag measure is critical because we have a number of rail resources in North County, a lot of rail infrastructure that has got to be addressed. And I realize, you can't necessarily go on line item and a particular ballot measure like this. But I would say I support it simply because if we want to get a greater access to rail and more effective rail services, these issues regarding sea level rise and decaying cliffs, that has to be addressed, as well as a couple of major digs. We have to get that work done.
Thank you. And now it's Kent.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I do support the Sandag Regional Transportation Plan. I think it's an example of the strategic alignment that we really need to have as an entire region if we're going to address issues that we have around housing, infrastructure, as well as even transit planning. We know already that if our goal, especially as a city and a region, is to enact the climate action plan that we have and to reach our goals when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions reduction, that we need to have this alignment. We've got to ensure that as we're thinking about housing development, where and how we place that housing is important. How we ensure that the infrastructure needed to support our communities is critical. And ultimately, many of these plans also require that we think about the mode shift that's needed so that public transit is especially delivered in areas where it's currently lacking. And I think we see that a lot in significant portions of D6 as well. So ultimately, yes, I think Sandag, both with their 5 big moves and its latest passed regional transportation plan, are critical for our region.
Thank you. And so, Jane, do you support the Sandag Regional Transit Plan?
I have not read it, but I do believe that there was money that was supposed to be used to expand highways, and instead the money was put into things like the Blue Line trolley, the extension of it. And I think we need to make sure that money goes where it's supposed to. Like, I mean, people were taxed, they had a gas tax, and the money was supposed to go towards making the roads better, highways better. We need to support people who are taking taking the freeways and highways to get to work. I like the trolleys. I like the bus system. I use the San Diego Metropolitan Transit System a lot, but it's not the best. There's, I would not want to take children on it. If I had children, I would not want to take them on a trolley. I think the trolley is great for students who want to go to UCSD. I think they get to go free on the trolley to go to university. I think
Thank you,
that's
Jen.
great. And
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. All right, we are on the next,
welcome.
the seventh question. And let's see, who's going to go? Kent will be going first. How will you ensure the watersheds in your district are healthier when you leave office?
Thank you for that question. I think D6 especially has a couple of watersheds that that we are part of, and I think a lot of our work in terms of ensuring that we protect them really, involves protecting the open space that we've got, looking at how the city can maybe be more proactive in terms of taking open space and making that, ensuring that that's actually designated. But at the end of the day, I think maybe the most critical thing that we know that we've been lacking as a region is really the investments that we're lacking for decades now in terms of stormwater infrastructure. Especially knowing that that's resulting in pollutants ending up in our water, and traveling all the way to the ocean, and that we need to find the investments that are needed to ensure that we can actually meet the backlog of stormwater infrastructure that we have across our region. I think that's been identified as a significant portion of the city's backlog in terms of infrastructure as a whole, which means we're going to need more support than just doing it as a city alone.
Thank you. And Tommy?
That's right. We definitely need to address our stormwater issues. In fact, I've been proposing for some time that if we want to do an actual capital project that actually involves pouring some concrete, let's find a way to actually go and harness a lot of the concrete culverts that are already pumping stormwater towards the beaches every time it rains. Let's catch it there and let's cycle it back into our pure water infrastructure once that's built. Let's capture and reuse that water before it hits the beaches and poisons the sea. And why does it poison the sea? Because we're not using non-toxic pesticides. We're not using chemical-free cleaning and personal care products. People still throw paint and motor oil. People should not be washing their cars in their driveways. It shouldn't be working like that. You should go to a car wash where they can use less water. But I'll tell you one way that you protect our watersheds is you don't build in them. You don't build an office park in Carroll Creek, which is proposed right now in Sorrento Valley. On the west end of Carroll Creek in a riparian area against the Mira Mesa community plan, the city is still moving forward with a proposal to do that. That's wrong, and that's a great way to go and ruin a watershed right there.
Thank you. Jane?
Yes, I really did like Tommy's answers. We got to make sure that the water that goes down the storm drains is not making our beaches in poor condition. I really have not seen enough street sweeping in Mira Mesa. The street I live on, I don't know when it gets street swept. I think that we need to do more street sweeping so that less garbage goes down into the storm drains. And I also think that Mira Mesa Boulevard has to take better care, because when it's raining really hard, the water goes up over the sidewalk. And when students go to Mira Mesa High School, they have to walk through water that soaks their shoes. We need to build a bridge to connect from the park to the high school. We need to make sure that the water is clean and that people don't, yeah.
Okay,
Thanks.
and Jane, stay on because you're going to be first at the next question. How would you address the community concerns about the presence of Miramar Air Base in District 6? In particular, the noise, the air pollution, and threat of an accident.
Can you repeat that, please?
Certainly. How would you address community concerns about the presence of Miramar Air Base in District 6? I don't know what that background noise is. In particular, the noise, air pollution, and threat of an accident.
Well, I will say that I do value Miramar Air Base, and I'm looking forward to the air show. And I appreciate that we have military so close to protect us. And I just wish that the jets wouldn't go down so close to the homes, because my condo sometimes shakes when they fly over, you know, when the Blue Angels fly over. Thanks for letting me answer.
Thank you. Tommy, the same question about Miramar Air.
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, obviously, MCA as Miramar, it's one of our main economic drivers, not just in District 6, but also in the city of San Diego. But Jane's not kidding. You know, when it comes to air show time, the Blue Angels, they are flying so low. I mean, they basically tell you to sit down. I mean, they come right over everyone's roof, and it creates a very, very potentially a dangerous situation. As far as the noise concerns, I mean, that's something that I would say both Mira Mesa and University City have been dealing with for some time. And, you know, like a lot of federal entities, whether it's a national forest or whether it's, an air base or some military installation, about every 2 years, they cycle in new leadership. So I think the best thing we can do is do what Councilmember LaCava has been doing, and having public meetings and public forums with the commanding officer, so that at least residents can feel as though they're being heard regarding noise issues. But I would like to see a lot of the air show traffic being directed back over the base and not over the heads of our neighbors, especially Mira Mesa, as Jane pointed out. That's dangerous.
Sorry, I muted myself. Kent, it's your turn.
Thank you. And thanks for this question. Ultimately, we really need to ensure that we are working strategically in partnership with the military, as well as our federal partners. I think it's important that our council members have strong relationships on that front. That's why I'm proud to have been endorsed by individuals like Scott Peters, knowing that we're going to have those relationships going in. I think ultimately, you know, engaging the community and having strong lines of communication are going to be critical. I was at the last UC Community Association meeting where Colonel Bedell was present, introducing himself to neighbors, talking about the importance of safety, but also taking questions directly from neighbors and thinking about some of the issues that neighbors are facing. I especially think about the importance of safety because our film festival, for example, we've actually had a film made just in recent years, a documentary talking about the accident that we had back, I believe, in 2008 or so. And we know that protocol may not always be followed, and that's critical from a safety standpoint for everyone who lives in the surrounding area.
Thank you. I think what I'm going to do is give you some advance notice. So the ninth question, we're going to go Tommy, Jane, and Kent, all right? So the ninth question is, what do you think about the County Board of Supervisors Regional Decarbonization Framework? So that's
Tom. Thank you, Gene. No, I absolutely support it. In fact, I'm a planning commissioner with San Diego County for Supervisor Tara Lawson-Remer, and we've been inching up to a major discussion about VMTs and vehicle miles traveled. And I think if there's some way that we can ensure that we're really preventing sprawl from getting into our hinterlands, where they're not only threatened by fire, but it also creates longer commute times and longer drives, essentially, for individuals who live out there. Plus, we as taxpayers, we have to go and pay for those fire resources, pay for those sheriff's resources to make sure that those areas can be policed and that you actually have the services there in place. I'm very much in favor of that. I think it's a good move, and I think it's a real sign as to how far the Board of Supervisors has changed just in the last couple of years, and it shows what good active leadership can do to a governmental body, especially one like the Board of Supervisors, which had been stuck in one very, very conservative way of doing things for far too long.
Thank you. All right, Jane, your turn. About the Board of Supervisors Decarbonization Framework.
You're muted, Jane.
I don't have an answer for that. I have not read about it, and so I apologize.
All right. Thank you for your honest answer. All right. And Kent.
Yeah, I think it's heartening to see that our county supervisors are taking action on this front. But I think what's critical if we're going to ensure that it's successful is ensuring that the city is at the table with the county to ensure that our climate action plan is working in conjunction with the county's framework. I think ultimately when we look at decarbonization as a whole across the region, we need to ensure that we're aligned when it comes to issues around building electrification, establishing the infrastructure needed for vehicle electrification, looking at ways that we can incentivize mobility shift, and ultimately even just looking at how we're going to work as a region to reduce vehicle miles traveled. And we know that this is, again, going to need to be strategic in terms of how we connect the dots between things around housing, our infrastructure development, as well as even public transit. And maybe the last note that I would have is that, the labor community is going to be critical in this conversation as well. And so we've got to make sure that we are able to connect all of these dots if we're really going to succeed as a region.
Thank you. So now for the 10th question, I hope this helps. It's going to go Jane, Kent, and Tommy. So the 10th question, Jane, we want to know who you think has the most responsibility for responding to the urgent warning from scientists about climate change. What kind of responsibility do you believe the investor-owned utilities, including SDG&E, have in addressing climate change? Jane, are you muted?
Well, you wanted me to be muted for a while. I know because of background noise. I'd like you to make the question shorter because it's a long question.
All right, but basically, whose responsibility is it to address the climate change? Is it investor-owned utilities like SDG&E, and what other organizations? Maybe we can start the timer again. Go ahead, Jane.
I think climate change is caused by many things. Like, for instance, the Russia bombing the Ukraine must be damaging the atmosphere a lot. When bombs go off, heat increases. We need to have help from countries around the world. We need countries to stop bombing because we can't. Some might say you can't prove that the heat from there is causing the earth to warm up. Now, we know that it takes 2 months for the ocean to warm up, so it can be hard to say that the bombing is causing the heat. But I will say that I think a lot of people in San Diego, they're doing a great job in taking care of the environment. And we just need countries around the world to care more.
Okay, thank you. And Kent?
You're welcome.
Thank you for this question. I think the real answer to this is just that we all have a collective responsibility to address issues around climate change. But with that said, I think the burden is especially high with our investor-owned utilities like SDG&E, especially because they're running a monopoly. And I think that's where we need to be able to hold them accountable, but also work up through the CPUC as well to ensure that that's taking place. The responsibility also lies with our local government. We certainly have a significant impact here in terms of the policy that we are going to drive, the communication that we deliver to our residents and our neighbors, and how we connect the dots between all of the different players. That includes both at the county and the city level. At the end of the day, it also means that it requires a willingness from each of us to act as individuals. I think we've all heard the alarm bells sounding for quite some time now, and that if we're not actively looking at ways that we can decarbonize, we're really just delaying the real change that we need to get moving.
Thank you. Tommy?
This is a much larger question than 60 seconds will allot, but I'll do my best here. I was one of the ones who was I worked to get the what's today the city's climate action plan passed by the county Democratic Party back in 2015, 2016. The city adopted it with some changes. Housing was not the only component of addressing climate change. The biggest issue that we have right now is the oil and gas industry. Now, let me take a step back for a second, because one of the components of that question was, whose responsibility is it? Well, obviously, it's all of our responsibility, but it also takes determined, driven leaders to go and see through that climate reductions are actually occurring so we can stay ahead of the worst effects of climate change. And I would say that, unfortunately, our utility has been trying to kill rooftop solar. That's one of the most effective ways to undo the spread and the use of greenhouse gas emitting outlets like natural gas. So again, I hope we can get another minute to talk about that, because this certainly warrants it. I would just add, if I can just say that if I'd been elected back in 2018, I would have been the deciding vote against the 20-year SDG&E franchise extension, because the city didn't get much out of that. And we need a lot more to get to our climate solution. I apologize for going long on that.
Well, I think you'll be happy with the next question then. And this is the 11th question is going to go Kent, Jane, and then Tommy. And our local utility has fought rooftop solar for years. What will you do to support the use of rooftop solar and increased energy efficiency retrofitting of homes and buildings? So that, Kent, you have first.
Thank you. Yeah, that's obviously a multifaceted question. So yes, we have seen the utilities fight against rooftop solar. We've seen that all the way up at the CPUC. I think that's where I was glad to see that our mayor took action to take a direct stance on some of the changes that were being driven from a utility standpoint at the state level. I think it's also a reminder how important it is that the city actually take action in terms of lobbying the CPUC, where we don't have a lot of representation. I think there's also a huge opportunity for us to work with San Diego Community Power. We're seeing a shift on that front right now. But we need to be able to work as a region to identify opportunities that we're going to be able to add from a rooftop solar standpoint. And it's not just on homes, but we've got to look at the opportunities we have in terms of public facilities, working with other partners to develop rooftop solar as a whole. The decarbonization, de-electrification element, I think, is in a whole nother piece that I think I'm running out of time on. So thanks.
All right, thank you. I know this is hard. And Jane, what will you do to support the use of rooftop solar and increased energy efficiency?
I support rooftop solar. I do wish that the board at my community association supported it too. I would like rooftop solar, and but we didn't get a majority saying yes, let's get rooftop solar. Not all condominium complexes will want it. We might have much more luck with single family homes having rooftop solar, because a board of a condominium association might just say no. I would work with, if elected, I'd work with the mayor and the council members. I'd read the material and listen to the input. And I will say, I am a Republican, and I like Democrats too. And I really appreciate listening to what Tommy Howe has to say and what Kent Lee has to say. And I will say, Tommy, I think you're really impressive, and not that you work for 91X. I can see why. You're a wonderful person.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Jane. All right. And Tommy gets to go with this too, and you can continue your discussion of rooftop solar.
Well, I mean, Jane made a good point about her HOA being reluctant to go and invest in rooftop solar, and I think we're asking the wrong questions here. The question isn't what will you do to increase rooftop solar. The question is, why is our city and our local governments, why are our friends in labor and environmental organizations and nonprofits and think tanks, all these organizations in our community, why are we not working together to make it easier for everyone, every homeowner, every property owner to have rooftop solar if they want it? That is the solution. Why don't we have rooftop solar on every single box store, on every single mall, on the top of every single parking lot, or every single a parking garage? It doesn't just have to be single family homes. We have got to change the thought and the paradigm on how we approach this. We live in San Diego. We have sun here all the time. Please, let's change the questions on this. Why aren't we working together to get more rooftop solar? That's the solution.
Thank you. And you will be happy to know that you get to go first on this next one. On the 12th question, do you support an all-electric reach code for new residential and commercial buildings in the city?
Yeah, but I do support that, but I don't necessarily think it has to be one or the other. I mean, I think I don't think it's a bad idea to have natural gas installed, even in new construction, as a backup. I would always rather have more than one energy resource available. Obviously, with new homes, I mean, new homes should be constructed, new buildings should be constructed with those solar panels in there. As battery technology increases, there has to be the capacity within these new structures, these new homes, to accommodate those batteries. But I would say that I don't necessarily think we have to go and automatically retrofit any place that doesn't have solar. And I'm saying that I want to decrease reliance upon natural gas, decrease its use. We're in an ideal position to do that in San Diego. But if we have something occur, if the utility gets their way and winds up subverting rooftop solar, then we're going to have another energy source available to us. So I wouldn't favor one to rule out the other, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Kent?
Yeah, I think if we look at the city's climate action plan, one of the big elements of that is driving more electrification in general. And I think that starts with new and perhaps municipal buildings as well. And I think if we're really going to look at how we equitably transition our homes and communities to electricity, I think that's as part of our gap. That's an important and integral part of the plan to actually reach the goals that we have. I think as a part of this, I know there's a lot of discussion about what the direct impact on workers are, and not just looking at the importance of seeking a just transition, but that ultimately that means a relationship with labor is going to be critical if we want to accomplish this. Part of this is going to involve us looking at establishing and ramping up new green economies, making sure that we secure funding that supports the transition, and really doing so in a way that's going to allow us both to retain the skills and the livelihoods of the people behind it while accomplishing the electrification that we're seeking.
Thank you. And Jane?
Yeah, I like Tommy's answer a lot. And yes, I believe that there should be more than one energy resource available. Like, let's say electricity goes out. There are times in Miramar when electricity goes out. Well, we need another energy resource. It can't just be electricity. I will say, if I buy a car, it will be an electric vehicle. But I am concerned about people not being able to put electricity in their vehicle if the power goes out. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with the 13th question, the order is going to be Ken, Tommy, and Jane. And so, Ken, how would you address traffic problems in Sorrento Valley? Do you have any proposals to increase public transportation and decrease auto use in that area?
Absolutely. So thank you for this question. I think for those of us who live, especially in this Miramar and Sorrento Valley area, we know that many of our neighbors always talk about traffic being a significant concern. And I think this is where public transit becomes really important if we're going to see a shift from that over time. I know that as a part of the Miramar Community Planning Group, over the years, as we've seen projects come to the table, we have been seeking additional ways always to mitigate some of the traffic that we have, including, for example, something significant that was done over even the last decade was installing smart streetlights so that we could better and more efficiently time how traffic flows along major corridors like Miramar Boulevard. That also means that we need more investment ultimately in public transit, which is significantly lacking here. Just having a bus route or two that goes east-west is not sufficient, knowing that we need both greater frequency and additional routes to make that effective. I will leave just as a last note that I spoke with a family just last week that uses the opportunity of traveling from here to University City in order to be able to take the trolley down to work. And so we know that that additional public transit is critical for those where that's the only opportunity they've got.
Thank you. Tommy?
Our public transit portfolio in District 6 is lacking. And I am being polite saying that. It's been in terrible shape for some time. The biggest problem that we have here regarding transit isn't necessarily an express bus downtown. It's getting our neighbors to work over in Sorrento Valley, in Sorrento Mesa, over at MCAS Miramar. We really don't have the kind of local bus coverage that we need so that people are incentivized and have an option to get out of their car and have a trip that's not going to take them any longer than being in their car. So I know that we're already proposing bus routes down Mira Mesa Boulevard. I think that's a clear option. Miramar Boulevard or Miramar Road is a little bit more of a clear option for doing that. But we have got to have work with MTS to invest in real public transit solutions. You know, earlier we were talking about the Kearney Mesa Community Plan update. We need to get a real proper transit center there in order to facilitate transit and dial that in more effectively with the one that we have at Miramar College just off of I-15 and break it off from just being, you know, subservient to I-15 and get it through the community as well.
Okay, thank you. And Jane?
Yes. Well, I appreciate all the routes that we have with the Sandag Metropolitan Transit System. Route 237, 235, 921, 110, 964, 31. Going Monday through Friday, that can get people to work really well. I mean, like taking bus 237 going west, east, it can be about 30 minutes or less than 30 minutes to get. So to get from like Miramar College to UCSD, it can be less than 30 minutes if you go at the right time. I'm really glad that we have the Miramar College Transit Center and the routes that we have. And I'm glad that we have a bus that goes on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. There's only one on Saturday and Sunday. It's 921A. And it's a small bus, not like the big ones. It's only Monday through Friday that you get the big buses and 6 going through Mira Mesa. That then goes to Sorrento Valley and Sorrento Mesa and La Jolla.
Thank you, Jane. And Jane, if you'll stay on, you're going to start the next question. And this is going to go Jane, Tommy, and Kent. Can you cite specific examples for how you've helped out or prioritized the concerns of small businesses in the area?
Okay. Now I will tell you, I'm not a fast writer, so can you please repeat that?
Can you cite specific examples for how you've helped out or prioritize the concerns of small businesses?
I have gone door to door to the small businesses, and I've asked them, and I go to a lot of businesses in my community, and so I talk to them and I listen to their concerns, and I would do my best to prioritize their concerns if I serve on the city council. And I will say that I hope that the best one wins. You know, I love my job. Whether it's Kent, Tommy, or myself, I hope that the best person wins.
Thank you. All right,
Thank
Tommy.
Well, thank you. My wife and I, we patronize local restaurants. We have a couple of favorites in our area in the southeast portion of Mira Mesa over towards Miramar Road. But I think more than that, I can tell you one of our big supporters is a small business actually over in the Miramar area that does a lot of very high tech work for entities like SpaceX and for certain types of custom cars. And their biggest concern is housing. And this winds up coming up again and again. But if you've got someone who's not necessarily making a six-figure job, we have to find places for individuals to be housed. And we need to have some actual affordable housing in the community. And right now, it seems that with Three Roots and with Stone Creek, these are not necessarily affordable housing options. And so we're making it more difficult for neighbors to actually live near the jobs and cut down on those vehicle miles traveled. You can't have folks commuting every day in the Mira Mesa from San Marcos and Chula Vista.
Thank you. Kent?
Thank you for this question. District 6 really is home at the end of the day to hundreds of small businesses. I think we often talk about the big tech corridors in our region, but when you actually look at the various communities within the district, there's a number of small businesses. And that's where San Diegans go to celebrate, to meet, to enjoy sort of our local neighborhoods, but also where a lot of our residents are also employed. I think we've seen over the last 2 years that small businesses have especially been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, especially as they've been trying to navigate changing guidelines, work to keep their employees safe, and really even just making sure that ends meet. Through some of the work that I've done, both as part of Pacific Arts Movement, and then also serving as the treasurer of the Asian Business Association, I've actually worked with individual businesses over the last 2 years to ensure that they have access and knowledge, especially for businesses who lack language access, to support programs, especially the relief programs that are being provided, for example, through the city of San Diego, and have even been able to assist some businesses in ensuring that they get the support that they needed. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, the 15th question, we're going to go Tommy, Jane, and Kent. And this is about SB 9. South University City is being considered by the Planning Commission for including SB 9 law for this area. That law enables homeowners to split their single-family residences, the lot. What are your opinion and concerns regarding SB 9 for South University City?
With all due respect, I'd say beware of that question, because I think that's a false premise, equating SB 9 with what is being proposed in South University City. Frankly, what's being proposed in South University City is frankly rather radical. And I think if it goes through, we'll be yearning for the days of SB 9, which is basically regarding ADUs. The reason that the South University City rezoning is being considered is because it has to do with putting multifamily units along transit lines. Now, that's a good idea around areas that have not necessarily been developed, or are commercial or industrial areas that could stand to have some residences put in there. In the case of South University City, you're talking about wholly rezoning an area that has already been zoned as a residential area for the last 60 years. And that's predicated on essentially one bus route, if I'm not mistaken, the 50, that goes along Governor Drive, which is South University City's only east-west access route other than the 52. So I'm opposed to the South University City rezoning proposal, and I would be aware of comparing that with SB 9 with all due respect.
Thank you. And Jane? Jane, I don't think we can hear you.
Tommy, I'd like your answer. Okay, now, I walked around University City, and can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, like University City on Governor.
You are breaking up,
The
Jane.
streets. People. There's one.
Jane, your audio is breaking up. I'm not hearing you at all now. You want to work on it, and we'll have Kent answer and then come back to you? Will that work?
I don't know what's working with my smartphone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. That's fine. Okay.
Okay. There are two lanes going east and 2 lanes going west on Governor east of Genesee. And there were people who were concerned when they're talking to me, thinking that it could be switched to 1 lane and they might not be able to go to the hospital in time in case of an emergency. The 2 lanes going in both directions are very important. Now, I don't know if you know, but in Mira Mesa, there was a change making a street next 1 block from an elementary school very dangerous. It had 1 lane for cars and then bike lanes on both sides. And the 1 lane, when the cars come towards each other, they had to go into the bike lane so they wouldn't crash into each other. And I'm concerned that University City might go from 2 lanes in both directions to 1 lane where they have to share the same lane and drive into the bike lane to avoid hitting each other.
Okay, thank you, Jane. And Kent, this is about SB 9.
Thank you for the question. I think what's happening in South University City is absolutely tied in to SB 9, and we've seen that passed from a statewide standpoint. And I've definitely heard from our neighbors there in University City about the concerns about residents being able to develop up to 4 units on an existing lot. And I think we can all agree absolutely that we have a critical housing crisis. We're seeing prices skyrocket across the board at the moment. And what we really need to ensure is that we're going to be developing housing that specifically serves our affordable and middle income families that have been lacking that housing in particular. And so at the same time, I think where and how we spur that housing development becomes extremely important. And I think this is a clear example of the depth of community engagement and feedback that's needed, that the city must do a better job of that if it's looking to make changes. And then finally, I would just note, I mean, we have a recently passed community plan update in Kearney Mesa. We have a lot of opportunities still for housing density in North University City. And I think those ultimately are still the areas where we should put our focus because they have the most immediate opportunities to deliver results. Thanks.
Thank you. And if you'll stay on, you're going to start with this, and this will be our last question before we do our closing remarks. So this will go Kent, Jane, and Tommy. And so the question is, District 6 has been referred to as an Asian Pacific Islander Empowerment District. How will you encourage API individuals to participate in discussions about the environment?
Thank you for this question. Most definitely, I have acknowledged, as you heard from me earlier, that this district, as it was redrawn through districting, now encompasses a population that is 41% Asian and Pacific Islander. Yet that is a community that oftentimes is not engaged from a community front, from a political standpoint, and especially from an environmental standpoint. And I think this is an important opportunity for us to ensure that those members of our community and their voices are a part of our discussions. I think that means that as a city, we have a lot of really in-depth work to do in terms of how we outreach to those communities. We also should not treat them as a monolith. I mean, we say Asian Pacific Islander very quickly, but really what it represents is an extremely diverse community that comes from a number of different backgrounds. And we have to understand how to sort of engage each of them uniquely. It's something I'd be happy to sort of talk about at length at sometime in the future, but I think it just goes to show that really ensuring that we have someone who's going to be able to look out for their voices and engage them is going to be critical right here in D6. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane?
I'm also of AAPI descent. My mother and her father were born in the Philippines, and I know a lot of Asian American and Pacific Islanders in Mira Mesa, especially since I work at the high school that's across the street from where I live. They learn a lot about the environment in class, especially in biology classes, and I'm talking about the youth, and they volunteer also. Now, I talk to a lot of people in my community of Mira Mesa, and I encourage them to participate. Definitely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now, Tommy?
You know, I I co-founded San Diego County Democrats for Environmental Action back in 2014. And, you know, we've tried to cast as wide a net as possible with other outlets within the County Democratic Party and with other environmental outlets throughout the county to bring in as many voices as possible. And I think that's going to be a constant concern for a lot of our environmental outlets to make sure that we always are casting as wide a net as possible to get as many voices in. But when it comes to the immediate needs of voters in District 6, you know, one place where the rubber meets the road as far as residents and the environment, it's in local parks. And in Mira Mesa, especially, and in University City, but especially Mira Mesa, we're blessed with an extraordinary number of parks. But I want to see the city make a greater commitment, not only to our parks department, but also to our open space department. So even places like Rose Canyon can actually have outstanding maintenance there. And it can be, and we can also maintain places like Montongo Canyon so that people have places to go and recreate and get elbow room. And I think that's good for everyone in the community.
Thank you. Now, before our candidates give their closing remarks, I want to thank you all for attending and asking such good questions. Please be sure that I'm speaking to the audience now, that you're all registered and vote by June 7th. We have some deadlines that I don't know how many people know that we are now going to have voting centers. So you can mail in your ballot. Everyone that's registered will get a mail-in ballot. You can drop off your ballot at a secure drop-off location starting May 10th. You can vote in person or drop off your ballot at one of the voting centers that will open Saturday, May 28th. But all the ballots have to be in by Tuesday, June 7th. Also, please attend more league events where we give in-depth information on all sides of critical issues affecting our communities. For example, this Wednesday, we're going at 11:30, we will have a discussion on election reform looking at ranked choice voting. Of course, also tomorrow night, we will have another D6 candidate forum, and hope that you can all attend that as well. And keep in mind on the views expressed are those of the candidates, not of the League of Women Voters or either of the hosts. And on behalf of San Diego 350 and the Center for Community Energy, I want to thank the candidates for running for office. It takes brave souls to run for office, and for attending our forum this evening. And I hope you all follow the league motto, don't just be a voter, be an informed voters. So with that, let's begin the closing remarks, and we will start with Kent Lee.
Thank you, Jane, Tommy, for being part of this discussion. And again, thank you to all of our co-hosts and just really all the audience members and sharing in this robust conversation tonight. As you've heard from me, I am running for city council with the belief that we are still a city full of opportunity, but that also means that it's opportunity that we really must also work to create. A lot of our neighbors have been dreaming of living and raising their families here. I'm certainly doing that as well. And one of the items I know we didn't even get to discuss tonight that I have been passionate about addressing is also looking at the lack of available childcare, especially considering the impacts that has had over the last 2 years of the pandemic. If we're looking to address many of the challenges relating to affordable and attainable housing for our middle-income families, to address the needs that we have for strategic infrastructure and transit development, but really also looking at the really structural issues that our city is currently facing today, I think we need to not only think of how we apply a lens of equity, but also to consider the many intersections when it comes to addressing these challenges alongside environmental and climate issues that we're facing today. Ultimately, that means that a lot of this work requires collaboration, especially with our community's voices being center at the table. And I believe that as candidates and electeds, we really are here to find and implement solutions at the end of the day. On the note of collaboration, I've been really proud to receive endorsements and support from a number of our elected officials, especially many of the ones that I would be working with directly, including Mayor Todd Gloria, 6 of our 9 council members, our county board chair, Nathan Fletcher, and Vice Chair Nora Vargas, and many of the individuals on our council and county who have significant experience in terms of dealing with environmental justice issues as a whole. And finally, I think I look forward to this not just as a single opportunity to engage many of the folks here, but if you are interested in learning more about our campaign and getting in touch, I certainly welcome you to reach out. And as suggested, I will be happy to leave my info in the chat. My name is Kent Lee, running for San Diego City Council in District 6. Thank you all once again.
Thank you. All right, Tommy?
I really want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this on tonight. This has really been an outstanding forum. I often say that as candidates, we do not get enough opportunities to have forums like this. So I want to say thank you to Jean and the whole team for all of your work tonight and fielding all the questions, and the participating organizations, San Diego 350 and excuse me, the Center for Community Energy. I'll just say this, since 2008, when Brian Mainshine went to Sacramento, our communities have not really had effective council members. In fact, we've seen our council seat routinely being co-opted by downtown special interests, lobbyists, and really folks who are utilizing our council seat to put their aims and their concerns forward instead of ours. And who have we had representing us since Brian Mainshine left? Carl DeMaio, Lori Zapp, and Chris Kate. These are not exactly persons of the people. These are not exactly folks looking out for our interests and our needs. They were looking out for downtown. I am the grassroots candidate in District 6. I'm the voice of the neighborhood. I've been made a priority of making Gold Coast Drive and Parkdale a part of my pitch since before I started running for office in 2017. Just this cycle alone, I've knocked it over 7,000 doors since last July. I have spoken to more neighbors than any other candidate who's run for one of these seats before, and I'm looking out for our neighborhoods and middle class and working class and blue collar neighbors. That's who I seek to represent, not downtown developers or lobbyists or the downtown black tie donor class. You've heard me discuss concerns today. You've heard me take actual positions on issues, not give political speak. I'm endorsed by the Sierra Club, the League of Conservation Voters, Hammond Climate Solutions, San Diego County Democrats for Environmental Action. When it comes to someone who will take action and someone who will be making the environment a priority in all of the decisions I'll be making, that's going to be myself, Tommy Howe, running for San Diego City Council in District 6. Please visit TommyHowe.com.
Thank you. And Jane? Are you muted? Because we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm a candidate for City Council District 6. My name is Jane Louise Glasson. I am a Republican. I used to be a Democrat. I love people from all parties. I am not supporting the vaccine passport. I'm so glad we have places like Del Mar that don't require a vaccine passport. I hope that City of San Diego never requires a vaccine passport. I think it is a shame that the vaccine is mandated for students. I think it's wrong. A lot of students have dropped out because of it, or not. I think that we should never require our police officers to have the vaccine for COVID-19. I think that people should believe that natural immunity works just as well, if not better. I hope that the zoning does not change in University City, and I'm very concerned that if it does change in University City and the single-family homes become 4-family homes or tower up really high, I'm very concerned that if that happens to University City, it could later happen to Del Mar and Solana Beach and other fine cities. I think that all this controlling and all is just wrong. I think that it can bring down property values and it can bring in a lot of traffic congestion. I hope that people will be able to continue to always own cars that run on gas. I hope that we're not just required to drive electric vehicles or vehicles that run on natural gas. I hope that we will always be able to drive our cars and not have to sell them. I'm not seeking any endorsements. I'm not seeking any contributions. I fund my own campaign. I will not be posting signs. I have one sign that I carry with me. I will say I really appreciated Tommy Howe and Kent Lee and Jeannie Brown and everyone else. Thank you so much. And Tommy, I think you're wonderful. You really impressed me a lot. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
You're
All
welcome.
right, and thank you all. And I'll speak for the co-hosts as well. We really appreciate all your attention tonight and hope to see many of you tomorrow night. This one was centered on environmental questions. Tomorrow night will be more general, all right? And looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow night. Good night.